Lot to get to tonight. We're going to cover some Georgia. We're going to cover some Georgia Tech. We're going to talk Falcons. We got it all to break down for you tonight. Emily, how you doing?
What's up, Bailey? Coming in on your day off? I mean, this is the best, okay? This really, really is the best. You're going to get some really good content from us today. When we're together, we give you the truth about what's going on in Atlanta sports. And there's nothing truer than Georgia football right now, Bailey.
That is the truth. And you were spent this past Saturday in Auburn at the game. They squeaked one out against Auburn. It was close there. What do you feel like you learned in that matchup?
Okay, so I'm going to start off with something that we talked about, which is the run defense for Georgia. It needs to improve. They gave up 219 yards to Auburn on Saturday. I went back all the way to 2018 against LSU. That was at LSU. Jake Fromm was the quarterback back then.
Okay.
That's the last time Georgia gave up 200-plus running yards to anybody. They gave up 275 to the Tigers that night. I remember the game. I was there. Baton Rouge was crazy, and Georgia actually ended up losing that game. When you give up over 200 yards on the ground to anybody, you usually do lose. So one thing I learned about Georgia's defense is that they better get better when stopping the run, but that they can still win even though they gave up that many yards, which is crazy.
Well, and they have to figure it out quick because Kentucky's coming to town, and they just had a phenomenal run game this past weekend. That's going to be something that's super alarming for that 7 o'clock kick in Athens this Saturday. What did you feel like you learned about Carson Beck in his first true road SEC test?
Yeah, so I learned that he really is as composed as his head coach says he is. I'm not ready to say he doesn't have a heartbeat, but I am ready to say that he isn't easily rattled because in that environment, it was so loud. I thought for sure he would have more than the one turnover he did have. Mm-hmm. He threw an interception. It's his third turnover of the season, second interception. He fumbled the ball too. I think it was against Ball State, if I remember correctly. But listen, he played well enough for the Dogs to win. And when did he play well enough? Well, the fourth quarter. And it took the Dogs all the way until the fourth quarter to get their first lead of the game. I mean, it was like under 11 minutes left on the clock, and that was the first time the Dogs led all game long. So put the atmosphere into play, put the nerves into play, put so much into play. He remained very, very calm for a young quarterback who made a mistake early on. It's like it never happened, truly. And he told me after the game, I was like, did the atmosphere bother you at all? And he's like, it's football. I like to play football. It's fun. I'm like, okay, yeah. What a response.
Something I will feel, and I don't want the word ordinary to seem like it's mediocre. It's not, but he's been consistently ordinary, and it's been enough to get the job done. And I feel like consistent is the key part of that because who he's been in the first game is who he was in Auburn, in my opinion. And that's for better or worse. I think that's great. The only thing I get really worried about, and this will happen, down the run in SEC play, there's going to be a game that is probably a lot closer than everyone predicts it to be. Can he be the guy? Not Brock Bowers, not Ladd McConkey if he comes back and gets more involved as the season comes on. He just made his return in his first game this season. Can he be the guy to go win a football game? I don't think we have that answer yet.
We don't. I agree.
And I'm not saying he can't. There's going to be a moment where it's going to be that kind of, does he have it or does he not have it? And I don't think we've seen it.
Oh, he's going to have to save the day somewhere
Correct.
along the way. It hasn't happened yet. I agree with you. But in two SEC games, the only two that they've played, they've had to come from behind and win. And he hasn't panicked yet. So, like, in that sense, to me, that's what I do like about him. But you're right. You're going to have to actually step up to the plate and make the winning play somewhere down the road, whether it be against Kentucky this Saturday or against a very good Ole Miss team in Athens a few weeks away. Heck, we don't know. Florida and Jacksonville, and usually the road to the winning the SEC East is through Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. The last however many years, I mean, since I've covered the Dogs, so 7 now, whoever wins that game, Bailey, usually goes on to play in Atlanta.
You were at Jordan-Hare Stadium, and you had an interesting you saw something that was rather interesting when it came to Javon Bullard.
Yeah, so Javon Bullard played for the first time in a couple of games. He's been injured. I think it's an ankle. We get very vague injury reports from Kirby and from coaching staffs. It's not like in the NFL where they're open about what's going on, but he came in the room to do interviews. He had a great game, a career high 9 tackles. He seemed to be all over the field, and he is a difference maker on that defense. But I interviewed him, and as he got up to leave the room, he limped his way out of the door. And I saw it, our photographer Lee Smith saw it, and Lee was like, ooh, and you could tell he was in so much pain. As a matter of fact, before I even started the interview, a trainer was helping him get his shoes off, and he was in pain taking his shoes off. So these are the things that college athletes period, go through, but you hated to see it because he had a great game. You couldn't tell he was injured on the field during the game, but afterwards, for sure, he felt that.
Before we move on to a lighter topic concerning Georgia, I do want to ask you what you feel when talking to Kirby post-game on Saturday. Where does he believe this team is? What did he learn from that Auburn game? How is he feeling now, 5 games in?
Yeah, so he continues to say that he learns that his team can fight. He's learning every single game that his team can come from behind and win. And I agree with that because at some point, like you kind of mentioned about Carson Beck, will this team be able to continue to do that? It takes a lot out of you week in and week out to come from behind and win. So he's learning that his team has what it takes to fight the fight. But what he says he doesn't know is why they continue to have slow starts. And he literally said that. He told one of the reporters, "Can you help me? Do you have the answer?" Yeah, because he was asked and he was like, "Can you help me with this?" Because he said he has no idea why they continue to get off to slow starts, and that's not something that you hear from him very often. Usually he has answers for everything for you, but this might be one of the first times I hear him actually say he does not understand why, and he doesn't know why the offense continues to get off to slow starts, and that also could essentially Bailey down the road, again, the coming from behind thing, bite them in the butt,
I think the thing that really concerned me about this game is they not only started slow, they started the second half slow for the first time this season, I would say. They make really good halftime adjustments, come out and kind of hit the other team in the mouth, and then they're rolling from there. But that was not the case this game, and that was concerning. I think the other thing maybe a lot of fans are noticing, too, is this defense is not as strong as they have been in years past.
Yep.
Coach speak, I guess you could say, is the standard, though, when it comes to Georgia. They've been one of the best defenses, if not the best, in college football, that when you see a little bit of a drop-off, you're going, oh, well, this isn't what we're used to. Because it's funny, when I was talking to Drew Butler and Rennie Curran on our SEC show, we were talking about the same thing, and it was kind of, one of the questions we had, though, was who has the best defense in the SEC? And Drew kind of said, well, I think I'm still going with Georgia on this one, and I kind of agree with him. Even though we sit here and harp on the run defense, especially against Auburn, I think they still have a lot to build upon. I think we're going to learn more as we get into more of these games, but I agree with Kirby. They have fight. Emily, we do have to bring one thing up we saw on social media that we talked briefly about behind the mic, and you know where this is going.
Oh, man.
So I was not aware of this, but apparently to Auburn, Georgia brought their own toilets. Can you speculate why they might have brought their own toilets to Auburn?
Okay. No disrespect to Auburn, because quite literally, if you ask anyone who knows me, that is my favorite SEC stadium. Mm-hmm. I think the atmosphere is great. They do a really good job. The eagle, the chants, the pom-poms, the songs, all the things. I think it's great. But the visiting locker room is awful. Where media does interviews, it's awful. It's smaller than like a one-bedroom apartment or studio in New York City.
For people who don't do what we do,
yes,
a lot of the time that is on purpose. They do not want to make it a fun atmosphere for any visiting team. Sorry.
Especially not Georgia, who comes in and continues to win.
Absolutely not.
And it's a very uncomfortable, it truly is a very uncomfortable place to be as a reporter, mm-hmm, because you're just running around just a little room trying to get all your interviews, and you're shoulder to shoulder with everybody, and it's not great. Locker room, not great. So Georgia took it in their own hands, for their players and coaches to be comfortable, because that locker room is just so tiny, and they want to be comfortable at certain times, Bailey. And at that point in your day, you want to be comfortable doing what you do.
Yeah,
I've never seen them do that before, though.
Never before.
Never.
So that's
Air
the first time.
Yes.
Okay, so now I need you to do some hard-hitting journalism
for
the rest of the road games. I need you to find out if they have toilets at every away game.
And for the record, I did not know either. You're the one who pointed it out.
I found it on social media, and I was like, am I missing something? Did I not know this?
Those porta potties, which, by the way, they're not your old school porta potties.
No, they're the nice ones with air conditioning.
Yes, you can be, again, comfortable in them. they were there. I can attest to the fact that they were there, but I thought they were there for like the TV crews and everybody else working in that area of the stadium. I didn't realize that they were for players and coaches who, yes, the locker room was literally right there, so you could just walk out, go handle your business.
I will say the video that was on social media where we found it, there was no toilet paper in the stall.
No.
Tough scene. Tough scene. We'll end that discussion there, and we'll keep going. We'll keep going with college football, but we're going to discuss a little about what's going on with Georgia Tech. They have made a change. They are demoting Andrew Thacker. He will be the safeties coach now and not the defensive coordinator. The new defensive coordinator is Kevin Schurer. And I'll read the statement from head coach Brent Key and why this change, and then we'll discuss it. So it says, quote, "Our performance on defense this season hasn't met the standard. For that does not fall on any one individual. In fact, as the head coach, the responsibility begins with me. I do feel that a new voice and perspective from the coordinator role is necessary for us to improve. Coach Schurer is a veteran coach that has had great success in all aspects of coaching defense and at the highest levels of football." End quote. Georgia Tech, this is all coming after they allowed 38 points or more 3 times in the first 5 games of the season, including the loss to a MAC team in Bowling Green on Saturday. They ended up losing that one 38-27. Let's talk about Georgia Tech football.
Yeah, so
there were a lot of high hopes of hopefully turning this thing around in Brent Key's first full year, but this is not a good sign. Five games in him.
2-3, so very mediocre, if not under mediocre start. And yes, I just want to let you guys know, like, Brent Key is an alumni of Georgia Tech, and he played college ball there. That program means everything to him, so he's going to do quite literally everything he can and needs to turn it around. But it is not, like you said, the right start to his first full season as head coach there. But what I like about this, Bailey, what this tells me about him is the fact that he's not afraid to make the change.
Yeah.
It's not even midway through the
I would
season
agree.
yet, and he pulled the plug, unlike the Falcons, which we're going to talk about in just a minute. Like, sometimes you just have to do it. If you're uncomfortable and you don't like what you're seeing, don't hold on one more game. Losses are losses, wins are win. Every single one of them counts. I love the fact that he said, I'm not going to put up with this. I don't like what we're doing, and we're going to make the change. I don't know how much of a change it's going to be, Bailey. I just don't know. Thacker's been there since 2019. He wasn't only under Key, he was also under Jeff Collins. So perhaps they need a change. 4 years deep, defense hasn't been great. Let's make a switch up. Is it going to be that much? I don't know, because Schurer is already co-defensive coordinator, so his voice is already heard in the locker room. But maybe the demotion of Thacker and his voice being completely eliminated, and just he's now with the safeties.
And they've been trying to figure out different things on defense too, with some rotations at linebackers, and nothing's sticking. And losing to Bowling Green at home is unacceptable.
Bad.
Not that Bowling Green is necessarily one of the worst teams in the MAC, but you can't be losing to a MAC team at home. And it's just not great, and it's unfortunate because I do feel that, you know, they have Haynes King. Last I checked, before going into this game, he was second in the conference for yards per game. Yeah. So he's been fairly strong, but something's got to change on defense, and we're going to see how much this change really does for the Yellow Jackets.
And it better happen fast, because they're facing number 17 Miami this weekend.
Yeah.
Let me just tell you that right now.
I don't know how fast those changes really change.
I'm just, like,
but sending positive vibes.
Right?
Sending positive
what
vibes.
A mission, like, right away. Yeah.
So this is the topic I can't wait to talk about.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I feel like we should put a disclaimer on this.
We're both going to agree on this.
Yes, we're both going to agree. We have talked about it a lot. I have been pretty vocal that I wait until 4 weeks in to really give my true opinion on a team. I am concerned about the Atlanta Falcons, and I am really concerned at quarterback. I have been hard on Desmond Ritter from the beginning, and I was giving him the benefit of the doubt. We are now 4 games in, and I do not like what I see, Emily.
No, and okay, guys, just so you guys understand, me and Bailey text each other when things happen. Like, during games, we'll text each other, and I'm like, hey, when's the backup coming in? Like,
I have literally said since preseason, by week 6, I would not be surprised if we saw Taylor Heineke.
Right.
And we're on
she
track
has.
right now.
And I thought we were going to see him week 4 in London. I mean, what is going on? So what I said about Georgia Tech, it does not apply with the Falcons. Arthur Smith did not. At halftime, he could have made a change at quarterback, but he decided not to. And on Wednesday, Bailey, I'm sure you're going to ask him, or somebody's going to ask him why he didn't make that change. And I'm sure somebody already asked him after the game. But this question is going to continue to come up unless Desmond Ritter makes a complete 180. But after throwing 2 picks in back-to-back drives and then almost a third one.
It's the exact same thing that happened in the Packers game, too. Remember that.
Him in? Why? I understand if you bench him, that psyche of a quarterback is very sensitive.
So
his confidence might have been shot.
Here is my theory. And Emily, you've covered a lot of quarterbacks in your time. I have covered a few, and there's a stark difference in the tiers of quarterbacks within the NFL. You have the elites, the Aaron Rodgers up there. You have the Dak Prescotts of the world, and then you just kind of have like this bubble of everyone else. Throughout preseason, you can see the glimpses of greatness or even good plays from solid quarterbacks, and I never saw that with Desmond. Then you see him in games, a lot of the times they lean heavily in the run game. I think Bijan Robinson has lived up to every ounce of the hype, but he can't do it by himself. You can't do it with only a run game. There has to be some presence of a pass game. And I can tell you right now, there is not a defense in the NFL that is even remotely terrified of what Desmond Ritter can do with the ball deep.
No.
At all.
No.
He misses. He can't throw into small windows. And I don't want to harp just on him. I think you could look at how this offense is designed, and we'll get there. But how it's designed, and you can almost tell. It feels like he says a lot. I go through my reads, I go through my progressions, and if the one he is told or he doesn't feel comfortable with isn't there, everything blows up. He's put in a box almost, and I think something that is interesting that we saw as well is how long before you lose a locker room when you can't throw the ball? How long before Drake London gets over it? How long before Kyle Pitts is over it? I mean, Kyle Pitts is an afterthought in this offense this entire season, Emily. When have we really last talked to him? And he's a tight end anyone would kill to have on their team. And then you saw the Mac Hollins interaction.
I was about to say, maybe he's already lost the locker room by what we saw.
Yeah, so if anyone didn't see it, there was a point where Desmond Ritter came off the field, Mac Hollins was on the bench, and Desmond went to go, dap him up, clap his hand, and Mac Hollins stood up and, yelled at him and, kind of not, I don't want to say bucked, but, kind of was like, no, don't do that. And it was very weird. It was caught on camera. Everyone was talking about it. It was uncomfortable, and there's something there. I think they'll play it off like it's not, and we're fine, and everything's good. But the Texans are coming to town, and they're not the worst Texans team. They have C.J. Stroud, and they've been airing it out. I mean, C.J.'s playing really good. So I mean, how much longer do you think Ritter has?
That is the problem. Is I thought for sure at halftime in London you were going to pull the plug, Arthur Smith.
At Arthur Smith, we're adding you.
Why not? You're in London, so the crowd can't go either way, right? You're in a very neutral environment where it's just a lot of, there are Falcons fans there and there are Jags fans there, but it's a neutral crowd of Europeans who just want or desire NFL football. Mm-hmm. You could have done it then and there and not made it weird. You wouldn't have had as many media members in your post-game press conference. There were so many reasons why you should have done it there other than hurting your quarterback's feelings, perhaps messing with his confidence, which we all know is a big thing. But why did you bring in Heineke if you weren't going to use him? He's a veteran.
And he's also paid decently well for a backup.
He's good. 9 years.
He's more solid than Ritter.
Yes.
Now, I do think there's also other safety concerns. I would consider Ritter has been what seems a good leader whenever there's interactions. He's trying to do the right things. But to me, Taylor Heineke, at least when playing, is a little bit more of a gamer and has that edge. I think you saw that when, Washington played Tampa Bay, and Heineke basically went toe-to-toe with Tom Brady after he wasn't even with Washington the whole season. They had just picked him up a week earlier and was like, hey, do your best, kid, because this was during the COVID year. So I don't know, but if I'm a Falcons fan, which I'm not, I'm not happy with how things are going because you have some really good pieces. And I'll tell you what, this defense, I feel bad for this defense, especially against the Jags, because there was only so much they could do at a standpoint.
I mean, I'm speechless at this point after us talking about it. I mean, yes, because so much money was spent on that defense this offseason. They have looked very improved from years past, which has been. It's funny, Bailey, because when Matt Ryan was here, the defense wasn't great. Mm-hmm. You had this great quarterback, and the offensive line never could click. And the defense was decent. And now it seems like it's kind of opposite, where the defense is decent or perhaps even good, and the offense is struggling, but not because they don't have players. Like you said, Kyle Pitts was drafted 4th overall, guys. That's the highest a tight end's ever gone in NFL history. Bijan Robinson, who, as you say, is living up to the hype, top 10 running back, that doesn't happen nowadays anymore, right? I mean, but they are using the heck out of him.
And that concerns me.
Is he going to get injured?
I don't know. I'm concerned. I'm like the one kid who's trying to do it all and the shining glimmer of your offense, and you're using him out the wazoo, which, like, I don't disagree with. How sustainable is it when you can't throw the ball?
I would have tried Bailey at halftime. I'm not a coach. I never will be. But I would have tried to switch my quarterback, and I would have tried to get a win. I would have tried to get a new voice in the huddle and somebody who might be a gamer, like you said, might have a little more oomph, be more comfortable. I would have tried it just to see, because it wasn't working that first half. It didn't work the second half. They got 1 touchdown, which is better than they did the week before, so maybe that's an improvement.
And, like, listen, I get the can of worms it opens, right? Once you do that, there's no going back, and then you're in this limbo of which quarterback starting, and you're dealing with that in the media, and it's a lot, and you don't want to put uncertainty in the locker room and the other players. But there's going to come a point where you're going to have to make that tough decision either way.
Yep.
So
I want to win, guys.
They have the Texans at home.
No matter what quarterback you put in there, I want to win a dub.
And listen, they're not the only team dealing with issues. Kenny Pickett ain't it in Pittsburgh. Justin Fields. The Bears are really going through some tough times. Sorry, Ellie. One of our producers and digital people for our OTT. She's a big old Bears fan, and she's been going through it. So, all right. On that note, we're going to segue to some high school football talk. Georgia High School has finally passed name, image, and likeness for athletes to take a hold of their name and get some money. It wasn't always the case. Emily, this is a big win for some high school athletes in Georgia.
Big win. Now kids can make money off, like you said, NIL, name, image, likeness, without affecting their college eligibility, right? So I love that. There are a couple of rules that I do think are important that, like, stood out to me right away. You can't use school names, logos, and money can't be incentive to go to a certain school. So those seem like duh, but that still has to be said, right? So there are some rules, but GHSA did the right thing. Now little high school kids are going to ride around in their Mercedes everywhere.
No, but true. They're going to get, like, can't they get sponsorships and deals where they don't even have to pay one? They just drive one as...
Oh, yeah. And this is good. Why? Because just like in college, these athletes, and especially ones that are very, dedicated to their craft, they can't get jobs, guys. They can't. They go to school, they have football practice, they work out, they have tutors, and then by the time, 9 p.m. hits, 10 p.m. hits, like, you can't go work at that time. No. You got to go to sleep. So for me, this works.
And I think something else that I think about just from my time as an athlete, and we used to have what was called like a student athlete orientation where they talked about our scholarship money and how to balance things and A, B, C, D, whatever. This is alarming to me that high school students are being handed this money, and you got to hope that their parents know how to handle money as well. I feel like there's a lot of education that needs to go with this, and there's just not going to be. You see that in the college game now.
That is the bad part of it.
And I also think, it changes a lot of dynamic in the locker room. And at such a young age, like, I think it's great that athletes who are amateurs can capitalize and get money. But also, at the end of the day, you're paying these people basically on potential. You can't tell what a 15-year-old is going to grow into, what their work ethic will be. So I think I think there's great parts of it, like you said, and then I think there's some parts that kind of leave me baffled. Another part of it is athletes also have to alert the principal within 7 days of a new NIL deal. They're going to be busy.
A
principal, right? You better go tell them. Can you imagine everything the principal has to deal with? And now they have to hear about every NIL deal. This is an interesting case where we were supposed to talk to Julian Lewis, quarterback at Carrollton High School, last week, and it fell through, but we're talking to him this week, and he is one of probably the biggest Georgia high school football players who would capitalize on NIL. And they were sitting tight. They were staying in Georgia because they cared about who he was going to be coached and what team he was going to play for. And he's playing for Joey King in Carrollton, and they've been killing it. They're undefeated. I don't think he has an interception on the year yet.
And he's a baby still.
He's a baby. I think he's 15. And he's only a sophomore. He's going to Southern California, going to play for Lincoln Riley. Go watch what Caleb Williams is doing. It's unreal. Their defense is terrible, but he's a great quarterback. And Lincoln Riley's known for turning out great quarterbacks, whether it's Caleb Williams, Jalen Hurts, Kyler Murray, you name it. So Julian Lewis could be the next part of that dynasty, but we'll get to talk to him later this week. And I'm really interested to see how his perspective has changed now that this has passed and what it means for him and maybe what a few of his first NIL deals will be. So it's going to change the game, and I think it's going to change a lot, obviously, here in Georgia as well.
And one last comment, which you said, like, on the bad end of things, like the pros, athletes are getting paid, which you like. Cons, like, the whole, like, what are they going to do with all this money? They're young, whatever. College coaches who have to deal with NIL have said that now their college kids are coming to them because they don't know how to do taxes. And I'm not making fun of these athletes because I don't know how to do taxes either.
No, my dad still does my taxes.
My mom does mine. Martha, thank you.
Shout out to the girls.
And we're like grown women and we don't do our taxes. So college athletes are now going to their coaches and asking for help. So what they're doing is they're hiring people to help kids, essentially college kids, with their money and how to put some aside, because all these deals taxes aren't being taken out. It's like a check. Here's the check. Do as you will. A lot of kids don't understand that you're going to get taxed on that money in a year from now. So it has brought up an entirely new dynamic that coaches have never had to deal with.
Very, very true. A segment here on Sports Night is what is on your mind. It's kind of how we wrap up the show for some final thoughts. Emily, you got about 2 minutes. What is on your mind tonight?
All right. Shout out to the Braves because...
You took mine.
Oh,
I thought you were going Hawks.
It's
okay. We'll circle back. Keep going.
We both have the same thing that's on our minds, two different topics. But the Braves are opening up their ballpark for the next 3 days, Tuesday through Thursday, 4:30 for fans to come check them out. Practice before their postseason run, which, as like the best team in all of baseball and their consistency throughout the year, you would hope that they're going to win the World Series this year. But if you can't make it into the ballpark for these games, they're expensive, whatever the case may be, you've never been to the ballpark, you want to see it, it's open to you. Shout out to the Braves. They've never done this before. So if you're a fan, 4:30 tomorrow through Thursday, go on in there. Check out the team.
Yeah, and Snickert, I will say, said he took a lot of feedback from the players and said that they wanted to keep moving. They wanted to keep having inter-squad plays. They wanted to do stuff to just keep the energy alive, and it's a great way to get fans involved. Another part of this is the Hawks had their media day today. Can you believe it's almost basketball season?
No.
That's
practice number 1 tomorrow.
Absolutely insane. I covered Donovan Mitchell with the Cavs, and he has never spoke so highly of anyone except Quinn Snyder. I mean, he raves about him, and I am very excited to see what he can do with this team. He says the fundamentals are there, but there's a lot of areas this team needs to grow. He mentioned just working hard and building those fundamentals, but also on defense. They were pretty bad on defense. I think they averaged 118 points a game, and that's 26 in the league. So they're going to have to get some things turned around there, but I'm excited for some Hawks basketball to get back up and started.
You've never been to Media Day.
Not here. No, it was cute. Yeah, it was very cool. It was somewhere like in a little warehouse. They had a lot of pictures and fun. So it's always a good time. All right, that will do it for this edition of Sports Night. Make sure to join us throughout the week at this time right here. For Emily Gagnon, I'm Bailey Burmaster. You all have a great night.
Good night.